Hello, New Zealand. I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is episode number 112. In this episode, we discuss the latest political poll. It shows a completely divided country right down the middle. Former National Cabinet Minister and NewZeal leader and former founding panelist on Straight Talk, Alfred Ngaro, joins Winston Peters and is standing for New Zealand First at the upcoming election. We'll find out what the panelists think about that and the implications of that. Should the private lives of politicians ever be public? And if so, when? You know what we're talking about, the events of last week. We'll also discuss how the media handled this issue. And should we be concerned about so-called progressive Christianity? And why is Christianity acceptable to the media when it's progressive? So we'll get into all those topics tonight. I have got another topic, but I don't think we'll get to it because I looked at the panel and I know they're going to talk a lot. So let's check who the panel is. And firstly, we've got Rodney Hyde deep in the South Island, looking a little sunburnt there. Rodney?
Yes, I've been out putting in posts. So it was a hot day in Otago. It was fantastic.
Well, you should be thankful you have the post in Otago. I mean, we don't get letters at all now, so well done. Right, ka-ching. Hang on. Christine, how are you in Taupo?
Not so bad, and Taupo is beautiful. We're having stunning, stunning days, and this is the best time of the year. It's glittering here.
Okay, and still on the throne is Queen Mel Taylor. It looks like it's a different house, but the same chair.
Indeed, we're just in between houses at the moment, so we're staying with our daughter and son-in-law and grandkids, and that is just awesome. Get to have my grandies around all the time and have snuggles, and yeah, it's awesome.
And is that one of the grandkids that, you know, spent quite a bit of time in hospital getting right and has just come out?
That's the one, our little miracle one, and she's 6 months now and reaching all her milestones against all odds, and she's doing fantastic. So it's a real praise God moment.
Okay, and speaking of babysitting, Simon O'Connor was babysitting over the weekend, has only just caught up on lost sleep. How are you, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, one night, and I was a complete wreck.
You're a
and
mess.
the baby slept, and the baby slept through. I mean, I'd be hopeless. I'm just actually really struck by the fact that Rodney's still got blue sky, which, of course, where he is down south, it's completely black and dark out here. We all need to move down to central Otago.
Yeah.
The sun's just going down.
Yeah,
I know. I can see it.
Here in Auckland.
I can see it reflecting off your forehead, Rodney.
Well, I think that's problematic with the human rights, Bob.
Exactly right. All right, I better move on before I get in trouble with all the bald people that are watching. Right, here is the image of the week. Basically, if you turn on the TV or the media, this is all you're going to hear about. Okay, so if you were going to listen to the news or watch the 6 o'clock news, this is the only topic they talk about. It's sort of petrol panic. So I don't know. Has it filtered down to you guys or any? Christine, you're nodding your head. Are you biking to work now?
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Kimmy doubles me all the way up to hospice.
I can just imagine the two of you on a tandem bike. Kim doing all the work.
Yeah, you'd be doing all the work, exactly. No, not at all. It hasn't affected me personally, and look, it will in terms of if this goes on and how much it costs. But what I am noticing in Taupo is the weekend was phenomenally quiet. I couldn't believe how few people there were on the streets. And I think there are people who are saying already, I haven't got an extra $40 for the week, so I have to stay home.
Okay, well, Simon did his bit for the environment and caught the train to staff meeting today. So well done, Simon. The Greens would be most proud of you. In fact, there may even be an email inviting you to stand for them this coming election.
Well, you've just ruined my reputation, so thanks for doing that. But no, look, we're noticing it. I mean, look, I'll be honest, Rich and I can absorb this fine compared to what a lot of businesses and individuals. But, you know, one of our vehicles is diesel, and we've gone from $1.65 to about $3. I mean, it's impacting the back pockets. And, you know, this as Christine says, people are feeling it. And even those who aren't, they're aware of it. Everything's going to slow down. And, I'll stop here because it's a whole new tangent. Maybe we'll pick it up tonight or on Political Playback on Thursday. But this is going to have major ramifications on the economy and the election.
I think you should be more concerned about your carbon footprint driving a diesel.
Yeah.
Take no notice.
I'll go around the block again just for you.
Okay. Look, let's get straight into it. Rodney, I'll come to you on this one. So the latest poll came out. This was the result, and National were on 30.8 because they weren't below 30. The media sort of didn't get all exercise. They weren't door-stopping all National MPs, running through airports, etc. New Zealand First continues its rise above ACT. Somehow everybody thinks Labor is still the answer, and Labor Greens, I mean, look at that, 45. But if you divide the left-wing parties and the right-wing parties, you get a split right down the middle. The interesting thing is the trend. So here's the trend, and you can just see that National has just been gradually going down and down. Labor's having this resurgence, but of course it's what the minor parties are doing. And if you look at the light grey line down the bottom, that's New Zealand First. They just are rising and rising. And yeah, interesting. This one is Prime Minister. Look at Winston Peters in the middle there, the grey line. He's had a flurry as well. He must be talking common sense, him and Pauline Hanson and Nigel Farage and Donald Trump maybe. How do people feel about New Zealand's current direction? Wrong direction, quite a bit ahead of the right direction. And one more graph before you comment, Rodney. So this is on the light blue is the most recent one. It's the Talbot Mills one. And the media did not report it. I saw one mention that it was a legitimate poll, but that was it. No analysis, no interviews. And it shows Nats on 32. So media moved on. They just weren't interested in it. And I think they're struggling to get interested in this one because National's above 30. They're almost 31. It's only when they go below 30 that they go off their rocker, the media. Anyway, Rodney, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's tragic. National give us no reason to vote for them. Luxon gives us no reason to support him. Winston does. We get a clear sense of what Winston stands for. We'll be talking about Alfred, but clearly he's picking up the Conservative vote, and good on him. He knows how to play politics. Luxon is a klux. He is just politically inept. And for some reason, the National Party has completely abandoned its conservative tradition, its conservative policies, and its conservative MPs. And so they will drop below 30. I'd be surprised at the next election if they got 25. And I'd be dumbfounded if Winston wasn't north of 15. There's such a gap in the market for Winston to season. But most worrying for the government is the right direction and wrong direction, because political parties, a lot of that depends on, who's been in the news in the past 7 days. But the right direction and the wrong direction is an indication of what people are going to do at this coming election. Are they going to vote for a change, or are they going to vote to keep the government? That tells me they're going to vote for a change.
Okay. Christine, should National be worried? What's this poll telling you?
Look, I think they've got to be worried and aware. And I don't know if they have a plan. I know nothing about it, but a lot of action needs to be taken. But I still have to say, I believe they've done some good things. I do not believe they did the big thing that everyone wanted, which was to turn the economy around. And I think it was almost an impossible task, although they could have gone much harder, but different reaction. But how? I still say every time we talk about this, Bob, and you and I have been on other things together, how could anyone with a brain, and I mean that sincerely, invite back Labor? You only have to look at the Labor leader tonight saying he's got no ideas what to do with the petrol situation. He's not in government. He doesn't have to think about it. He's the leader of the opposition. What is the matter with them? And people out there going, oh, tick, yeah, I really like them. They'll give me money. They won't make life difficult like this. Well, that's the end of our country for a long, long period of time if we get that process back in there. I don't understand it. I think they've got some high performers. They're not people that you may agree with me, Bob, on, because I'm very impressed by Erica Stanford. I think she's done a magnificent job, whether you like her processes or not. I love Mark Mitchell, and I think he's really put a stamp in there. And I think Simeon Brown, who's taken on an absolutely impotent health created by Labor, an impotent huge department that is vital to the country, I think he's finally starting to turn some of the things around. They are quality people. But where are Labor's quality people? I keep seeing those voices and faces from last time that have wrecked us, and they seriously want them back. I reckon it's going to be a mixture of the current coalition with whole different levels. It'll be different. Winston's going to do really well. That's my belief at this moment.
Okay, I mean, Simon, that is the key, isn't it? The real issue is the left versus the right, because, and we'll discuss this in the next section, but if ACT, New Zealand First and National are going together, you can see there that they've got enough to, it's basically 50-50 right down the middle. They figured out the seats allocation, and they said it's 60-60 seats each. So the real impact is that what's more of interest is whether the centre-right parties are going to get across the line before the centre-left parties, because the centre-left parties is a pretty scary beast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, it won't surprise you. It is to me, and I'm with Christine. I mean, how is it that 2.5 years in, people have forgotten the absolute disaster which was the last government? Doesn't matter if it's economic, on our social cohesion around COVID, you name it, they stuffed it up. But I think part of the problem, Bob, has been, and it's the classic, I think, dynamic. Rodney might correct me, but if you overpromise and underdeliver, you're in trouble. And I think, unfortunately, that's what Luxon and friends did. They overpromised that they'd just be able to come in and turn things around, and they haven't been able to. And much of that is beyond their control. The other thing I'd quickly add, and Rach and I were talking about this the other day, is it would be great if the government could stand up and actually blame Labor for the faults around debt and spending and the number of public servants. The problem for Nicola Willis, Chris Luxon and the National Party is they're doing worse. Just as many public servants, higher debt, higher spending. So they can't actually criticise and critique the former government. And all Labor's doing is just sitting back quietly. Small target, say nothing. And so basically people get frustrated. But I will say this, I'm picking they will still get in. I think there's a lot of variables to come. There's still a chance of a leadership change. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge. I mean, all those little axioms. But I think the centre-right will get through. But you will see ACT and New Zealand First taking more of the vote. And you're going to see National very depowered to get around the list. At the current trajectory, they're basically going to have no list MPs. And you're going to have not just a smaller National Party, but some supposed big hitters. They're all gone. Their careers are finished.
Okay, Mel, you got any good news for the centre-right parties, or is this looking pretty dangerous?
Yes, I agree with the other panelists. It's so bewildering, and it just shows how split the country is. You can see all this reshuffling going on the right, with National dropping, with Winston and New Zealand First going up. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around why so many people are still going with Labor and the Greens. I think it shows, and I mean this with no disrespect, but political, being naive politically. I think there's a lot of people out. I mean, I'm used to looking into policies and seeing where they stand on social issues and stuff. But I think a lot of people just go with mainstream media and see, Hipkins having a go at someone else and being like, yeah, without actually understanding the policies, what can be introduced, what's it going to do to the country, and weighing up where they stand on values and morals. And I don't think it really matters to a lot of people. They simply just don't understand, or, you know, don't want to look into policies. It's just personality politics.
Okay, the interesting thing, and I should have said right at the start, is that this poll was done by the Post. What's the name of the company? Reed Research. Sorry, Radio New Zealand. Reed Research.
Oh.
I had to look deep into the article to find out, because you know what I was wanting to find? When did they poll? And I had to look deep into the article. I had to look at 2 articles before they eventually admitted that, firstly, it is purely an online audience of 1,000 people, but they had polled half the respondents to this poll before the Chris Hipkins issue blew up. So to me, that is a major, and that's why I showed you this comparison with other polls, because as you can see, there's still quite a bit of variation. I mean, Rodney and Simon, you've both been in the political game. When you're looking at these polls, I mean, are you just looking for trends? Because there's always the margin of error. You get variations between the polling companies. So what are you specifically looking for when you look at a poll, Simon?
Well, I was going to defer to Christine, actually. She looked like she was really to drop something really important there. So I'll defer first and foremost if I can.
Oh, no, it's now gone completely out of my head what it was I was going to say, because I realised I couldn't say it. So you carry on.
Look, I think trends are important. And I would underline, bold and italicize what Rodney said at the start. It's the right direction, wrong direction. That will be freaking the MPs out. And I know that, you know, a number of the Nats are worried, and those that are not should be. Right and wrong direction is what tells you where people are going to pivot. And not only is that gap widening, but it's continuing in the wrong direction. As I said a bit earlier too, with what's happening in the Middle East, things are going to get a lot worse here before they get better. And just to underline this point, Bob, even if the attacks and conflict ended tomorrow, we are talking months before the economies of the world begin to even head back to where they were.
Okay. Rodney, I was just looking at those numbers, and if you take right direction and it's neither right or wrong, so you could argue they seem settled, then people who think it's in the wrong direction is only what? It's 50. So it's kind of like 50-50. Am I reading that right or wrong?
Well, I'm now looking at the axis. No, you're reading it wrong.
No, because so wrong direction is 50%, right direction is 33%, and neither is just under 20.
Yeah.
If you combine right direction and neither, which means they don't think it's wrong direction, it's like we're split down the middle again.
There's a 20% gap between those who think it's a right direction and a wrong direction.
And that's the key. Okay.
Just a couple of things too. We have MMP. It used to be first past the post. And so wrong direction and right direction was very, very damning at the start of an election year as to whether the government was being returned. The clever thing about Winston Peters' positioning is he's actually being Deputy Prime Minister. But voting for him is actually seen as a vote against the government, which is extraordinary positioning by him. So you could be seeing that we're going in the wrong direction and vote for Winston Peters. And because you think that if he gets more MPs, he'll make a difference. We also have to remember about Mr. Peters, as he's been an MP for nearly he was first elected as an MP nearly 50 years ago in 1978. So he's an extraordinary operator. We've never seen anything like him. Now, in 1996, for 3 years, he campaigned against the government and then returned it in supporting Jim Bolger. He has he once put Helen Clark in office in 2017, and he put Jacinda Ardern, in 2005, and he put Jacinda Ardern in government in 2017. So I've never been a person that thinks Winston Peters is guaranteed to go with National. Not for a minute would I think that, and I'm seriously thinking of throwing my vote his way. I would take issue with Simon, which is a very rare thing for me to do.
I do it often.
I think the Middle East situation could resolve itself extremely quickly, and the markets would bounce back extremely quickly, and that we would be astonished, and it could be a very good result. I think the Iranian conflict is the most significant event in my lifetime, for better or for worse, and we don't know which way yet. But if it goes well, it could actually usher in extraordinary stability in the Middle East, great access to fuel, cheap fuel, steady fuel, and markets have a way of factoring the future into today. That's what they're doing. The media have talked themselves into this being a disaster and a long-term thing like Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam. That's all the talk. But to me, it doesn't look anything like that. And I could imagine in a week or two, we could be the other side. Could be wrong because there's a fog of war and not much information. But I think we've talked ourselves into a funk over it.
Okay. I've just been fascinated to watch the fact that Iran, who we were told weren't a threat at all, suddenly put up some missiles that went twice as far as we were told they could impact. And media have been quick to move on from that particular admission that actually Iran is far more dangerous than anybody has wanted to admit. So that's been quite ironic. All right, I want to move on. Does anybody want to, Christine, I can see you want to say something.
I do. I've remembered what it was, so I'll be very pleased. Can you just tell me or confirm for me that poll was of Radio New Zealand listeners, or it's a Radio New Zealand poll because they are the reddest radio station in the country, or was it just a general poll that they manipulated out there?
No, it's commissioned by Radio New Zealand, Read Research, so it'll be an independent audience, but it is primarily online, so you're not ringing people at home. It's specifically people who are online who may be more news savvy, but maybe more sucked in by the news. I'm not sure.
I'm more doubtful about those ones. But,
yeah. But then again, if you compare those results, so you got Labour ahead of National, they're both in the 30s, Greens and New Zealand First on 10. Have a look at the Courier, the Talbot Mills, similar figures. That's just it. People say, I've never been polled. But the fact of the matter is when you look across, that's the key. Look across the whole polls. And as Simon said, look at the trend. And that trend is what you're seeing in all the polls. Right. Anyway, let's move on. And speaking of political parties, yesterday, for those who didn't hear, this was the announcement made yesterday.
New Zealand was built on a pioneering spirit. We climbed the highest mountains, we split the atom, and yes, we even gave the world pavlova. But more than that, we built communities, we built trust, we built a country where people believed that they belonged. But you, like many others, New Zealanders, are asking a simple question today: what has changed? Because something has. You see it in the pressure their families are under. You hear it in the questions parents are asking. You feel it in the uncertainty that many young people carry, and you see it in the public conversation and discourse that has become more divided and less certain of what it stands for. Because somewhere along the way, the moral line that once gave us clarity has been blurred. What was once understood is now debated. What was once steady now feels uncertain. And when a nation loses clarity around what is right and what is not, it doesn't just affect public policy, it affects people, it affects families, and it affects the way that we relate to one another. And over time, it begins to erode the very foundations that hold our societies together. So because I believe that the core convictions that have shaped my journey are also reflected within New Zealand First, I want to announce today that I intend to stand as a candidate for New Zealand First.
Okay, so that was the announcement. He is moving from leader of NewZeal to standing for New Zealand First. Interestingly, New Zealand First seem to have stolen our label and called themselves social conservatives, and so that's nice. But anyway, Simon, I'm going to come to you first because I want to throw a bomb into all of this. And you made a comment to me today and you said the danger is that Alfred's move to New Zealand First could actually help Labor. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, it depends how the cards fall, but this is one trajectory. Let's be really clear about this. There are multiple trajectories, multiple outcomes here. But one is that the likes of Alfred moving to New Zealand First pulls even more vote away from National, particularly conservative, socially conservative-leaning people, Pacifica, weakens National even further, and then ultimately puts either the whole centre-right actually a bit weaker. That doesn't nuance in that as well, because of course National voters are going to New Zealand First. It sort of still keeps the centre-right together, but it still weakens National as a whole. But the second element is, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting what Rodney was saying here, but Winston will do what is best for Winston. And come election day at the end of this year, he will do what's best for him and where he gets the most baubles. And if National is weak and Labor's in a position to offer him more, he'll take it. He's done it multiple times. So that's sort of what I'm trying to suggest to you. So that's not throwing stones at Alfred or his decision, but long and short, this will weaken National. This could potentially weaken the perception of the centre-right, and you never know where Winston's going to go. If he is the kingmaker, there is absolutely no guarantee, Bob, that he will stick with the centre-right.
And if we want to see an example of that, just have a look at what happened in South Australia over the weekend, where basically the Liberal vote went to the One Nation Party and it just allowed Labor to hang on to the seat and come through the middle. So once again, I guess, it's a little bit of that splitting. Christine, is this going to help New Zealand? I mean, you were saying that, you're expecting New Zealand First to poll even better. Is this going to really help?
I like Simon, I think it will attract the Conservative vote, particularly the Pacifica vote, and that's a massive vote. If you can get them on board, that would push the numbers up a long way, and I'm sure that that's possible. I just don't know, though, because the media, and we know that they are, I'm calling them extreme left just about all the time now, and they will be really against Alfred. He will get a tough time. I'm absolutely sure he will, because they just can't leave it alone. But I honestly, I just don't know where it's all going to end up. I have to say, as a potential voter for Winston, if I thought there was a hint that he would go with Labor, if I think that, no way could I take that risk. I just couldn't do it. So there must be people like me who'll be looking for major assurances, which I know can always be flipped on their head, but looking for major assurances before they did anything like that.
Okay, before I come to you other two, this is what Winston said on One Breakfast this morning, watched by 3 people, by the way.
You also spent a decent chunk of your speech going through various political parties and giving your frank assessment of them. You talked a lot about Chris Hipkins and your thoughts on Labor. Can you confirm here that you would never work with Labor? I know you have said it on social media in the past.
What I can't understand is how someone could be such a failure as a minister. Every portfolio he had. Then gets up in Parliament, he lies to us about what he knew about COVID-19 and inquiry. We exposed him in this place 24 hours. We've got far more serious things to come, I can tell you. I said at the time in Parliament, stand back and watch here, because we're not giving up on this matter. They gaslit it and took a whole lot of people, chiropractors, nurses and doctors, shoved them out of their profession forever. Or in some cases said, they'll be coming back, but they didn't come back. And there he is. Tell me one thing that he ran properly. This is someone, university trained, been in university and politics all his life, couldn't run the school tuck shop, and you're telling me that someone who would lie to your face when I was a minister with them, who made him a minister in the first place, did I ever go back and work with him? No. Maybe I'm a slow learner. but you don't get to lie to me twice.
Okay, so in short, ruling out Labor?
Yes, because, I mean, first of all, they're ruling themselves out. Can you have a look at the Labor Party? They've just had a reconfiguration of their front bench for cabinet. Please don't tell me you think there's a cabinet there. You've got people who've got no experience at all.
Okay, Rodney, reassure you?
No, not at all. But I would vote for the Greens if Alfred joined them. I love Alfred, and I just think him being in Parliament, particularly in a smaller party, will be fantastic.
No, you wouldn't. Rodney, you're lying. You would ring up the best psychiatrist you knew, and you would book Alfred in for an appointment. But tell the truth.
Well, I'd consider I'll vote New Zealand first if Alfred's in a good slot to win. There you go. I love him.
Okay.
I think he's a fantastic, and I think if he's given a good list place, he'll bring 3, 4, or 5% to Winston for the reasons that have been outlined by Christine. He is a leader with a big following, and he can reach a lot of people. I think it's a fantastic move by Winston Peters, and good on him. And I absolutely share Simon's concern, because Winston's going to go to 15, 16, 17. National going to sink to 25, and Labor might be quite strong. They dump Chris Hipkins, or Winston has a change of heart, and he can say, I'll keep the Greens out. And here's an interesting thing. If you're a social conservative, how bad would a Labor New Zealand First government be with 17% whatever MPs, 21, 22 MPs of New Zealand First in it, including Alfred, compared to what we have now? Not that bad. What scares us is the Greens and the Maori Party. Of course, Labor are useless, but so is National, if we're honest.
Okay, I'm just noting down that at 8:29 on the 23rd of March, Rodney Hyde said he might vote for the Greens. I just will make
if Alfred goes with them.
If Alfred goes with them, okay. Mel, what do you think of the decision?
I think it's great. There's a number of reasons. One is because, well, first of all, I wanted to know if you and Simon actually wrote part of that speech for him, because it was very family first oriented. No, it was a great speech.
I think he may have AI'd our website or something.
I think so. Yeah,
like
definitely. Yeah.
If I'd written it, it would be full of grammatical mistakes, spelling errors.
Oh, must have been
and
AI.
terrible jokes.
But no, I think it's great. I also don't think it's the end of the announcements. It wouldn't surprise me, because this is quite an early announcement, and it's a safe one for New Zealand First, because Alfred's, how would you put it? There's not lots of baggage with him. Politically, he's quite clean. Everyone knows where he stands. He's clear cut. But I think we're going to see possibly a few more surprise announcements as we go on politically. That's just how I'm feeling. I'd also be interested to know if Alfred's going to get back into, well, in 2017-18, he re-established the New Zealand Parliamentary Friendship Group with Israel. I think you might have been a part of that, Simon, from memory. So it'd be interesting to see if he's going to, if he gets in, if he's going to bring that up again, get into it, how New Zealand First and Winston would feel about it. I think it's a great move. Also because he's made a stand to get in, so he can do things knowing that as a minor party leader, that was probably not going to happen. And I think it speaks volumes to all of those minor parties that have been going at it. Like you did that open letter, and it was good to see Alfred, doing what he's doing.
Okay, well, I do want to just get into that and talk about what does this mean for the Christian vote, the Christian parties, which I'll come to. But Simon, when I was talking to Alfred this morning on that very high rating program Daybreak, I did ask him, I said to him, it was interesting with the media because if he'd been a new candidate, they would have been asking him, okay, as a Christian, what's your view on abortion, euthanasia, same-sex marriage, conversion therapy? They didn't go anywhere near that because, as he said, as Alfred told me, he's already been cancelled once for those views. And so they can't do it again. They already know what he stands for, as Mel just said. So in some ways, what's the media going to do? They're just going to try and starve him for oxygen, aren't they?
Well, firstly, actually, I'm not just saying this because I work with you, but don't knock actually Daybreak or our other shows. I suspect many mainstream media outlets are rather jealous of the number of people who are watching these shows. But secondly, you're right. They're going to starve Alfred of oxygen because actually the more the media barrel into him around conversion therapy, abortion, euthanasia, gay marriage, drug use, Trump, Israel, whatever you want to talk about, that's actually going to drive the voters towards him and New Zealand First. They're disaffected and annoyed at how mainstream media are going. So, yeah, you're right. He's been cancelled once. And to be fair, not just by the media, by the National Party. And secondly, attacking him, criticising him too much will actually drive vote towards him. So I would say the way they handled it on Sunday is indicative of the way it's going to go forward, which was a fairly light touch and then finding the slightest thing to try and mock him. In this case, one person, I think if I'm not being derogatory, you said, Bob, seeing that you threw me a hand grenade, you said like one Karen makes a statement from the audience, and that's what the media latch onto. So you expect them to try and ignore. But Winston, Alfred and New Zealand First, they're rather difficult to ignore in entirety.
Okay, I just have to put this question up, just to throw one back at you, Simon. I could answer it. Brett says, Bob, can you please ask Simon if he's been asked to run again? Brett, the answer is that Simon has quite a large restraint of trade on him. So it's going to cost him an arm and a leg to leave Family First. Anyway, Simon, do you want to answer that one?
Speaking in the third person, Simon is very happy in his new season of life, doing what he's doing with Family First and elsewhere. My time in Parliament is over, but there's now plenty of space for other good people to step in.
Okay, Christine, impact for other Christian parties. I mean, you were part of a what might be loosely labelled a Christian party a number of elections ago. What does Alfred's decision mean for them?
I think it gives people an option of at least one person in a party that they can feel they can rely on, because no one else is talking like that or acting like that. I don't know what I feel about Christian parties, having been very deeply involved in the one that I was involved with, which was Colin Craig's Conservative Party. They always seem to end in disaster. I don't know, they've got a death wish or something. Something always goes horribly wrong before they get to the point. And can I tell you, that party in a short period of time was strong. It had some excellent people involved in it. It was just tragic what happened to it. But it almost seems inevitable if you look back over the history. I don't know whether it's naivety or what it is, but they just seem to get into trouble, and everyone's looking for them to get into trouble. So you got to walk a really tight rope, and they don't.
Okay, Mel, you have stood for Christian parties in a number of elections. What is your message for them now? Does it change, or do they just continue to do what they are doing, put up alternative policy, be involved in the public debates, as I said in my open letter, be part of the campaign, but just understand that NewZeal isn't going to be one of those ones in that same area?
First of all, I want to give credit to anyone that gets involved in a political party, whether it be major or minor. It is a lot of work. You invest a lot of time and resources, and oh my gosh, what goes on behind the scenes, the stress, Yeah, so good on them. Your open letter was brilliant. I've in the past written something similar with when you're in a minor party, especially a Christian party. There's this, you're in a bubble and everyone around you is so positive and you guys are going to get in and the polls are always wrong, they're fraudulent, and you start to buy into all of this stuff because you want to succeed so much. Having stepped out of it, it's a totally different picture. Really, we need some unity, and it hasn't worked for how many years with so many standing. I think there were over 10 last election, Christian parties, minor parties, whatever they wanted to call themselves. That's actually gut-wrenching. If you look at the left, dare I say it, but they don't look all over the place like that. There's not heaps of parties springing up. They look weirdly unified, albeit dysfunctional as, but they do. Whereas on the right, you've got all of these, minor parties popping up everywhere vying for the vote, and it's actually sad, and I think it's doesn't reflect that good on unity and Christians, and that's my opinion. And saying that, I've been on the other side where it's like, woohoo, we're going to get in. So, it's a hard one.
We almost did now. We almost did.
Almost did.
We almost did. Oh, dear.
Rodney, are we going to see more national MPs do this? What Alfred's done?
No, they won't lose. They won't leave the caucus to join New Zealand First. That would be an act of treason that wouldn't be rewarded by either side. But you could see some high-profile Christian leaders, I think, follow Alfred across, which would be a very good thing for New Zealand First and a very good thing for the country. My own view is that we don't particularly want a Christian party. What we want is Christians in Parliament. And we should be encouraging Christians to stand for every political party. Why not? We're a Christian country. We have political differences and we settle them in Parliament. But the one thing that we should all share is our Christian heritage and our Christian faith. And we would be way better if that formed the basis of our politics. The one thing that Maori and non-Maori agree on, the one thing that Labour and National could agree on, is that the Lord God is our saviour.
Christine, is it fair to say that National are losing the social conservative so-called broad church, and that's to their loss?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are. For a long time, that particular piece of ground believed, the people on that piece of ground believed that National were going to come up trumps. And last time they were quiet, Trump's not a good thing to say, is it? That they were going to do the things that were wanted. And there just hasn't been enough of them. I don't think they're useless. I do not think they're useless. But they have not done enough, and there is something that isn't resonating. But I don't know where we're going to end up. I look forward to elections, but I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this one.
All right, let's move on. We want to talk about the issue with Chris Hipkins last week and when does private become public? Just before we do that, though, I'm just getting my numbers here. Just want to remind everybody that we have a new show and it has panelists that are half the age of the StraightTalk panelists. And it's specifically targeted at a younger market, and it's called CounterCulture, and they just had their second episode last week.
I was at a conference just a couple of weeks ago, and it was about politics and economics and demographics and society, and everyone was involved in policy. And then one speaker came up and said, look, I know you all care about all this stuff, but the most important thing you can do with your life is to have children.
Communists have in the past said that marriage is like formalized prostitution because men get sex and women get money and provision from the man.
I must listen.
So that is a new program that is available on our social media, on our website, on our YouTube, and they had a day, the most recent discussion was the 4 guys, but there are women involved as well. So there is a balance there. We are doing our bit for gender equality. The last episode was, is marriage good for men? And the one before that was, should Christians get involved in politics? So that is a new show, all part of Family First staple now. Right, let's talk about the biggest issue from last week, and that was that there were some claims made by the ex of Chris Hipkins. The media immediately jumped to with the same narrative, effectively, that these were unsubstantiated claims. And look, I do want to ask, we're not going to delve specifically into the claims, more talk about them generally. But the question is, when does the private life of a politician become public? When is it of public concern? Rather than public interest, I'm going to use the term public concern. When should voters be aware of some of those things? The one thing that I thought that the media did not call Chris Hipkins to account for in their coverage was when he turned up for the media conference and he said this.
The time that I've been in politics, I've made a very conscious effort to keep my private life private and to keep my family out of the spotlight, particularly my children. You won't find photos of my kids anywhere on social media. You won't find me talking about them beyond generic references to being a parent anywhere in public. I've made a real effort, based on a conscious decision I made when I first got into politics, that I would keep my private life private from my work, and I intend to stick with that.
The only problem was that that's not what's happened, and a lot of people were quick to call out the fact that, no, he was quick to put the family up. And I'm not going to show the photos of the kids, but there were posts that people found where he was showing the kids. So, look, Rodney, I'll come to you first because I don't know if you've had experience on this, but in your view, well, perhaps you could just ask, how much do you put your family out there when you're involved in politics? Or is it just put out there by virtue of the fact you're in politics, so you can't avoid it? And therefore, what's your response to what happened to Chris Hipkins?
Well, every politician makes a conscious decision about how much they'll involve their family, and it's not easy. And tragically, in the world today, marriage breakups occur, and they certainly occur for politicians. And I myself had a divorce while I was an MP. So I empathise with Chris Hipkins. But I utterly reject the premise of the question, because the issue here isn't about his private life at all. This is a question about his character, and that actually is in play all the time. Because is he looking after his children, and is he looking after his ex-wife? And the answer is no, according to his ex-wife, and actually according to him, because when he was asked after how his children are, he said he didn't know because he hadn't seen them. That was after he had paraded himself with his new love, lovely, it happens, saying how wonderful it was all going with the blended family. So there were clearly lies all through this. So it wasn't a question of a private situation at all. It was a question of character. And then we get this thing about it being unsubstantiated. Actually, it was substantiated. It was substantiated by his ex-wife. She said this is what happened. That's substantiation. He can reject the allegations all he likes. It doesn't make them untrue. They were very, very specific and very easy to disprove or to prove one way or the other. And I would bet dollars to donuts she's 100% correct in what she alleged, because it wasn't a he said, she said situation. They were very clear factual matters that would suggest he is absolutely derelict as a husband, as an ex-husband, and as a father, and therefore derelict as a human being. Now, that matters when you vote. It's not private. It's a matter of character. And like I say, In many ways, I sympathise with him because I went through a divorce while a reasonably high-profile MP, and it's not fun. Minister, actually. It's not easy. But I'd never treat people like he has. I think we need to know. And I just can't believe that the media ran with his pathetic deflection and his pathetic little tears, and then a man would use his children as a shield to try and protect himself. He made it about the children. The allegations weren't about the children. They were about him. And he did this big, I'm protect my children. He's not interested in protecting his children, clearly. So no, I think it's it's not framed. It's been framed incorrectly. It's about his character, and I have to say, at the moment, he couldn't dismiss, he couldn't refute the allegations, he couldn't rebut them. He just denied them. Well, that doesn't work. His wife was very clear. I believe her 100%, and he's a scumbag who shouldn't be in Parliament, let alone a leader, given what she said. There you go. That's my bit.
Okay, I am just fascinated to look at the comments because let me just show you a couple and see if you can see what's common here. Kathy says, I totally agree, Rodney. Catherine says, agree with you again, Rodney. Character is important. Hipkins was judging us about what a woman is. Lisa says, the main thing is that people should be aware of the character of the person leading the nation. Now, the reason I say that's significant is that all three of those comments were from women. I was expecting, I'm just interested to, the spin-off, which isn't a magazine, website I'd encourage people to go to, but they said the whole issue was messy, or they found it messy, because they said it was the intersection of a feminism. In other words, you always believe the woman, politics, privacy, fairness, and marriage. So in other words, they figured out, well, they really didn't want to come to the conclusion they came to, so they said it was an intersection and it was messy, which is convenient. Mel, what do you think?
I'm a little unsure on the whole thing. I really don't take a lot of notice. First of all, I didn't know he had children. It shows how naive I am or uninterested. When I heard that he had a partner called Tony, I did wonder if it was male or female. But I think you've only got to look at the policies of the party as well to judge a character on what they're like. Look at their abortion laws. I mean, look at their abortion policies. It's just so radicalized, which, it puts things into perspective about how they feel about woman and family and the right to life and all the rest of it. I think the whole thing's just messy and complicated. If it was someone on the right, then the media could have just absolutely gone for them. And then I have the concern that allegations are not 100% proven, but on the right, if they're attacking someone on the right, the media will make them almost look 100% proven, and that is the deep concern. I mean, I don't hold Hipkins in any high regard anyway. And yes, he totally contradicted himself. That was just, for a leader, you think you'd be onto it, like, hey, I've done all these magazine shoots and my kids have been there. That was just stupidity. But yeah, I do worry about one set of rules for one side and one set of rules for the other side regarding private or public, and especially when it comes to mainstream media. They're dangerous, absolutely dangerous.
Mel, can I just jump on something you said and take over Bob's job? How does National Party's policy on abortion differ from Labor's?
What was that? Labor, he was there when Labor brought out the full-term abortion laws. So he would have been part of that policy creation.
National agree with it, right?
but they didn't introduce it. They weren't on the bandwagon to say, right, this is what we want to do, the laws we want to change. And that goes through a lot of their other policies as well.
I mean, I'm very serious about this. Chris Luxon at the last election absolutely ruled out changing it. So he agrees with it.
Not as openly as the left look to agree with it. Like if you look at the Labour voters...
I think you're being...
Well, in defence of Mel, National didn't campaign on it, but they voted for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, there's not a big difference, but the fact of the matter is if Winston hadn't put Jacinda into power in 2017, we wouldn't have had that abortion law in 2020, is my view, because Bill English would have been Prime Minister and he would never have let that law through. So I know what you're saying, Rodney. There's not a lot of difference between the two parties. You just have to look at the vote. But that's the thing with the Conservative Party. They never set out to social engineer like left-wing parties like Jacinda Ardern and Helen Clark. But the problem for us is that when these right-wing parties get into power, they don't fix anything. They just sit back. They're conservative by name and conservative by nature, unless you've got a few firebrands like Simon and Alfred and Simeon and a few others, but they're getting slowly squeezed out of the party. Someone who does have a little bit of experience of their private life becoming very public is none other than Christine Rankin, and I can see your blood pressure just boiling a little bit there, Christine. I mean, you were literally hung out to dry, and when I see the media say this, unsubstantiated claims, the media did not even know there was a word called unsubstantiated when you were hung out to dry, did they?
And I was hung out over and over and over again because it was a coming together of a government led by Helen Clark. She had a thing about me. I never met her in my life. I still don't know what it was. But
it was your earrings, I'm sure of it.
She didn't like them, and she did make that obvious. However, should have bought a pair and she might have relaxed a bit. But the reality was the way they treated me is the absolute opposite of the way they have treated him. I had a story to tell. I was happy to tell the truth. I went on Sunday night television to tell that truth, and the woman who interviewed me started crying. They kept me waiting for 40 minutes. When I get in there and the interview takes place and I tell the truth, and at the end she starts to cry and shake. And I gave her a hug and I said, "What is the matter?" And she said, "They set you up. That's why it took so long. They set you up. They planned every question to make you look as though you were absolutely lying." So it didn't matter what. They hunted me out at home. They went to the neighbours of my husband, knocked on every single door to see what they could find out about us. There was nothing. There was nothing. It was absolutely the most terrible thing that I've ever experienced, and that's because they hated me, and I was the most hated woman in New Zealand. So it was just fantastic to be able to do that. But they didn't just do it in one situation. They did it to me from the very beginning of that process. And I've said to you before, Bob, most people could never have survived and would have taken their lives. It was 2 years of hell every single day, and it went on and on and on after that. And New Zealanders believed it. Some still believe it. But I've never gone away and the tables have changed. You're a politician. You are standing up for, I was not a politician, I was a public servant. But if you are a politician, you stand up, and I'm afraid you do put yourself and your family on the line. So if you do something like that, you're going to be called to account, and rightly so. So you're the one putting your child at risk. And I remember, Rodney, you were given a hell of a time. I don't know if you've put it out of your mind. And so was Colin Craig. It didn't matter what the truth was for Colin Craig. They, and I use the word crucified with some respect, that's what they did to him over and over and over again for months. He would never have got, if he'd cried as Hipkins cried, wouldn't have made a blooming bit of difference. They would have exposed him in every way they possibly could. So no, they treat the people they hate and they disagree with totally differently than the people that they have support for. And it's an ugly, disgusting business.
So I think the interesting thing about all of this, Christine, sorry, just before I come to you, Simon, is what if the ex is telling the truth? about Chris Hipkins. Nobody has actually even asked that question. The media have moved on. There's a great article by Carl Dufresne, who used to be the editor of the Dominion Post. I'd encourage people to look it up, Carl Dufresne, just Google Carl Dufresne blog. But he says that there was just a complete media coming together with a narrative, unsubstantiated. It was almost like they rang each other up and said, how are we going to deal with this? And he said the media had a chance to prove that they weren't biased, and they completely failed with this episode. But Christine, that's the question. Nobody's actually asked the question, what if Chris Hipkins' ex is telling the truth?
Well, she is telling the truth.
I believe she is too. And look, it would take such a lot of courage and a lot of anger to come out and tell that story. It's a horrible story. It's ghastly for everyone. It's ghastly for your children. But she's sick of him being this wonderful man portrayed by the media as can't do anything wrong. When has Chris Hipkins ever agreed that he's done anything wrong? Where's the 30 billion that he wasted during COVID? The whole COVID thing was led and managed by him with another two idiots. When has he ever admitted he did anything wrong during that process? I did my very best. I did the best I knew. And, we were just trying to help and save people. Never an admittance that he's done anything wrong. And here we go again. And you can't tell me he was perfect and she was mad, because that's sort of the way people portray it.
Gordon, can we just chuck up this comment, because I think it's just to encourage you. Dean wants to start a movement called Mabega, which is Make Big Earrings Great Again. So it's kind of like it's a follow-up to MAGA. We're all going to wear big earrings. Simon, I don't think you've actually avoided the gaze of the media either. I think you were treated terribly as well, weren't you?
Yes, but nowhere near what Christine and Rodney have been through. My wife, who I very rarely put into the public eye, was abused by the media on multiple accounts. But before I come to that, if I might, look, first and foremost, tests of character are important. And when you're in politics, every aspect of your life, present and past, are there. It's just unavoidable. And the higher up you go, and never forget, Chris Hipkins is vying to be the next Prime Minister, or to return to the prime ministerialship. Integrity is even more key, and character is so. The other thing I'd want to say is to acknowledge actually what Christine and Rodney went through. It's possibly hard for people viewing and listening to understand just how ugly that affair is. Look, the other thing, before I come to quickly share a personal story, the media were great proponents of the Me Too movement. You remember that? Believe all women. But all of a sudden, Jade, who is, I don't know her, by the way, just I know her name now, Chris Hipkins' ex, is not to be believed. So that's the first hypocrisy of the media. Carl Dufresne puts it out beautifully too, the tautology, the repetition of, unsubstantiated claim. Well, ipso facto, that's what a claim is. It's unsubstantiated, but the media felt they had to put that out there, because the media are running interference here, trying to pour cold water over things. But just from a very quick personal side of things, I very rarely put my family out there. It was a deliberate decision, partly because of my life training background. I'm a step parent. Pretty much all I ever did, Bob, was the odd picture of Rach and I at events. But the mainstream media are assholes. And so they attacked my wife on her teaching profession. And Simon Wilson in particular, who is a corrupt communist, and I hope he's watching this because he's an absolute disgrace, came to a debate in the last election and impugned, defamed, and insulted my wife for doing things she didn't do. He claimed she was abusing other candidates. He wrote that, did enormous damage to my wife first and foremost, who, again, has never sought political office, insulted, impugned, defamed. It was clear it was not her. We were able to demonstrate that very quickly. He fought for days along with the corrupt assholes, and I'm going to excuse the expression, but I am really angry on this, these assholes at the New Zealand Herald, and apologies to the Family First followers, defended his actions against all the evidence. They took days and days to attack my wife and my family because it suited them. They are corrupt beyond means. And it's about time we all actually looked at media like the New Zealand Herald and Stuff and Radio New Zealand and the rest of them, and we treated them accordingly. And again, I'm sorry that it's a bit angry, but boy, that made me wild. They can attack me as much as they want, but they took to my wife because it suited their political aims. That is how pathetic they are. By the way, this will make an excellent reel for social media.
Yeah, I'll just have to get out my beep button, but that's okay.
That's all the emails tomorrow. My God, Simon was saying, just tell them I'm Catholic. It'll be fine.
But that's just it. People don't understand what it's like for such injustice. And Christine, it wasn't just at you, was it? It was also at your husband. They didn't stop just with you, was it? It was anything you were connected to.
Anything that I was connected to. And yeah, I absolutely understand Simon's anger. And, you get this angry and you realise how absolutely dishonest and unscrupulous it is, and you're helpless. You're just helpless.
Helen Clark brought a new level of vitriol and personal politics to New Zealand. Yep. It was a marked step change. She was and is a very nasty, venal woman who will set the hounds of her party on individuals and their families for political purpose. And what she did to Christine Rankin and her family was absolutely disgusting. But it was her modus operandi, and they were supported in this by the New Zealand media. And of course, since then, everything's got worse. And you're powerless, aren't you, Simon and Christine? When your family are being attacked, you're absolutely powerless. And it makes you angry when Chris Hipkins does a wee tear and they all go, oh, and he's taking legal advice.
Oh,
He wasn't taking legal advice over that. There's nothing defamatory about it. And then they refused to print the so-called unsubstantiated allegations. A lady's not going to lie about having a miscarriage and whether her husband was looking after her or not.
But you guys know it as well. I'm sorry, Bob, as we hijacked the show, but the damage is done by the time they've published the articles. And look, Chris Luxon's going through this as well, not on the moral front, but the Samoan title issue. They've landed the hit, and that's what we went through. I mean, minor compared to Rodney, Christine, and others, but the hit was landed. But the fact that you had to argue for days to get a retraction on something which you had all the evidence was on your side, but they didn't care.
I don't know how they sleep. I don't know how they sleep at night. If that's your job, I don't know how you can sleep at night. And I actually fear for them as they get older and reflect on their life's work.
But will they? Will they actually ever get it and care?
No, we pray they do.
Mel, have they ever come after you? Because it's like you aren't. It's like you and I are part of this special club.
Oh, no. However, I was terrified so many times. I felt it was like walking on eggshells, watching them go after person, because we had all those boys in care, and it's like, imagine if they go and talk to this one boy that was disgruntled because, we didn't let him smoke pot or huff petrol. And it was like our job was on the line, what we were doing. It was really, really scary.
Okay. The good news, Simon, is that a lot of people have said, no, you don't need to apologise. But I just want people to know that at Family First, we have a swear jar. And for every swear word, that's a bucket of KFC for the boss. So I counted 4 buckets. Would that be correct, team?
Well, it is, but I worry about your health, Bob. Four buckets of KFC. We might lose you.
I gave up worrying about my health ages ago. Look, we are out of time. We've gone well over, but I just want to say that this is a record crowd watching live. It's our biggest audience ever, and it just keeps getting bigger. So they must have known you 4 were going to be on, and we were going to cover this topic. And we're not going to get on to our other 2 topics, so I'm going to have to defer it to next week. But it's been a fascinating discussion. So Rodney, it's got dark outside, so that's the end of your fencing. Thank you very much, Christine. Simon, go and have a nice cool drink with your wife. Give her a hug from us. And
I'll get some
Mel,
soap. I'll get some soap.
Yeah, I'll tell you. No. And thank you, Mel. And thank you for watching. And hope you have a great week. Simon will be here tomorrow morning, calm, cool, and collected with a bar of soap at 7:30 for Solid Ground. So make sure you watch out for that. And we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.